and I have
Welcome to Media Path. I'm Fritz Coleman.
And I'm Louise Palanker.
Two guests today, Wheezy, one from journalism, one from entertainment. First, we have Brian Karem. He's a journalist and an author. His book, Free the Press, has a foreword by the great Sam Donaldson. Brian's hosting a comedy show in North Hollywood at the Comedy Chateau on Lancashire Boulevard, February 27th. It's titled Free Speech and Comedy. It's going to have special guests. We're going to tell you all about it. Our second guest is a talented actor who's been part of our lives in many TV shows throughout his career. He played Dr. Gonzo Gates on Trapper John M.D. and recently on General Hospital. He's Greg Harrison. He'll be with us shortly as well. Weezy, what do you have?
I have read the novel James by Percival Everett. You may have heard like 10,000 other people discuss the book. And so here...
I can't wait to hear what you say.
But you have to read it for yourself because everyone has their own... It opens up a conversation in everyone's own mind. The novel James by Percival Everett is much more than a perspective shift in the telling of Huckleberry Finn. Yes, it's Jim's story this time. Jim and Huck have individual motives for heading down the Mississippi on a raft. They are each escaping their circumstances. But Huck is a white boy and Jim is perceived by the law as property. Mark Twain's story explores Huck's struggle to embrace fuller concepts of right and wrong without truly entering Jim's turmoil. It's a brilliantly layered story, for sure, which has compelled many of us to ask ourselves the questions that Huck faced as white people. Percival Everett lights up the tortured intricacies of a slave's inner dialogue. It's relentlessly twisted and horrifying, while infused with a defiant dignity in the knowledge that your relationship with your own thoughts is wholly yours. Percival Everett writes with blurry lines examining our lineage, our appearance, our dialects, and our adherence to institutional expectations, showcasing the vicious absurdity of our insistence on racial constructs. The only cure for the rift in our nation is addressing our collective wounds inflicted through the crimes of imperialism, and that can be best achieved by white people reading Black and brown stories. The radical right is banning books because they are addicted to the disease of their imagined supremacy. If you think that kidnapping people, torturing them while they literally slave to build our nation, and then blaming them for being here is okay, then you are ill with a sickness that will strangle you. There is no shame in being white. There is shame in refusing to look into the face of our violent, predatory history. We all need to really see it until we can't stop sobbing. That is when we will begin to heal. The telling of James's story is essential toward that goal. Its ultimate defiance being it's a book written by a man who was not lawfully permitted to write. James is by Percival Everett.
Wow. Lots of people I know have read it. I can't wait to read it, and you made it sound even more inviting.
Yes.
I have a race-based issue coming up here, too. This is Sly Lives, a.k.a. The Burden of Black Genius. It lives on Hulu. I wanted to do this because I talked about Questlove's amazing 50 years of Saturday Night Live music documentary last week, which was unbelievable. And this was his follow-up project that he talked about, and I couldn't wait to see it. I'm a huge fan of Sly and the Family Stone. Their music in the 60s and 70s was a phenomenon and accessible to everybody. Sly, as a person, is accessible to no one. He's not interviewed in this film. He's 80 years old, still lucid, but his motor skills are not good, so he would not be interviewed. But you learn a lot about him from his family and his friends and his bandmates. Sylvester Stewart, Sly Stone, was from the Bay Area. He was a hugely popular DJ in San Francisco in the 60s. At the same time, he would play in various clubs at night, being a skilled musician on multiple instruments. Eventually, his various bands morphed into the Family Stone. This band was groundbreaking for a number of reasons. It was one of the first popular acts to include men and women. It was one of the first recording acts to be of mixed race. And this was the peace and love 60s in the Bay Area. Their music was sort of utopian in that it was very culturally inclusive. They had as many white fans as they did black. They always preached a message of getting along, like their hits Everyday People and Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. He probably would be on Trump's DEI most wanted list these days. Thank goodness he's not around to worry about it. They played at Woodstock, maybe the greatest moment in the film. The Family Stone had a fairly typical rock group arc. Band starts, band becomes work obsessed, band becomes super famous, band fades because of drugs. There's commentary by lots of talented people in this movie. Andre 3000, D'Angelo, Chaka Khan, Q-Tip, Nile Rodgers, producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Reid. George Clinton of P-Funk, and Clive Davis. Grace Slick talks about how Sly produced the song Somebody to Love when it was recorded by her first band before the Airplane made a hit out of it. Sly is still living a reclusive life in L.A. Starting in 2011, he was living in a camper van. He's been sober since 2019. He suffers from COPD. I love this band. Back in the 60s, music got weird to me. Sgt. Pepper and all the psychedelia, and I felt like the world was throwing a party that I was not invited to. So I was drawn to R&B acts like Sly and the Family Stone. Another home run for Questlove, Jimmy Fallon's music director and leader of The Roots.
You could tell from the opening that it was a Questlove piece because boom, 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 boom. I just love the way he just slams those openings to his films.
Yeah, the editing is always, he's masterful with that.
Yeah, it's so essentially him.
Yeah, it's great. All right. Our first guest, Brian Karem. Brian is a journalist who covered the White House. He's done investigative work. He's written a book called Free the Press with a foreword by the legendary Sam Donaldson. He's working on a documentary currently about Trump's first 100 days, and I hope he answers my big question, will we last through the first 100 days? He's got a great podcast called Just Ask the Question. Great chats with experts about the latest politics. And we'll talk about his other accomplishments too. But we want to tell you, he's doing a comedy benefit, February 27th, Comedy Chateau on Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood. It's called Free Speech and Comedy. He's going to have special guests Hal Sparks and Tom Arnold. Funds from the tickets will be donated to LA Fire Relief Funds. Go to info@thecomedychateau.com. Tickets are only $20. Are you kidding me? A bargain. And the parking is free at the bank next door. Welcome, Brian.
I don't even own part of that bank. I'm telling you. You know.
All right. So what it said in some of the press about this event, which is going to be great, you're going to have conversations at the benefit too. What types of conversations? Politics or comedy?
We're going to talk. Yeah. Well, we want to talk a little bit about the confluence of. You got Donald Trump taking over the Kennedy Center. You have him squeezing out the AP. And so what we want to do is talk a little bit about how in this new Trump era, can you even have a laugh? Can you even speak your mind? Because Donald Trump has taken over so much of the life in America in his first 30 days. This is just day 30 of his, first 100 days. Just day 30. And think of all that's already been laid to waste. You asked the question, do we survive? I don't think we have. I think we are not a democracy anymore. Donald Trump has destroyed that. More importantly, the Supreme Court destroyed it last summer when they gave Donald Trump unlimited immunity. So we have a huge problem in this country with free speech. We have reporters who aren't doing their job, comedians who feel like they can't even have a laugh at anyone's expense. I want to talk about that because at the end of the day, we all, laugh or cry. We'll be here all the week. Try the veal. I want to laugh just a little bit.
I have a question, Brian. I spent the first Trump regime sort of casting the movie, just getting through those 4 years by imagining like who would play the various roles in the films that would invariably come out. Nothing has come out. Or do you know anything about this? Was everyone afraid to make a movie about Trump's regime number one?
Well, I liked,
The Apprentice. That was a great movie.
But that's it, and that's not about.
Apprentice was, no, that's his early years.
Yeah.
Great movie. I'm glad that he was nominated for an Oscar. I thought the guy who played Roy Cohn should have been nominated. I thought he was amazing. But I think you're finding people bowing to the knee of Donald Trump. Look at the press briefing room. People go, let's walk out in a mass boycott. And I go, why? Well, he's just going to replace us with sycophants. He already has. So you already have like Jeff Bezos and you have Elon Musk and you have all these large media conglomerates are already bowing to Donald Trump. So you're not going to see them push anything forward. They're part and parcel in bed with him. That's one of the reasons why you've got to bust up the media monopolies. That's the book Free the Press talks about that. There are 6 companies that own or operate 95% of what you see, read, or hear. I'll guarantee you none of them are, this isn't a liberal bastion. This is tilted towards money. And what we're all about is feeding you information that already, and, we're the poor brothers of the, the stepchild of the entertainment industry. We're feeding you pablum that already influences and at the same time backs up what you already believe. So, we're going to tell you what you want to hear, and we're not going to get you out of your informational silo. And so anyone who would want to buck the trend and do a movie about Donald Trump would find a very, very hard row to hoe to get it done.
But doesn't it feel similar to what happened to Orson Welles?
It feels similar to what happened in the Soviet Union and Hitler and fascist Italy and the Napoleonic era. Every time you've got a dictator or a king, it feels very much like that. Look, just take a look at the last issue. Donald Trump kicks the AP out of the briefing pool, the protective pool. There's about 10 to 15, maybe 20 reporters that circulate through the pool. Fewer than 100 organizations supply the pool, the in-house pool, and the travel pool, which has exclusive access to the president. And he kicked the AP out because they refused to recognize the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, saying, I decreed it a fact, and therefore it is. Well, that's not how facts work. So, there's been no country recognized that. There's been no law passed. He simply put out an executive order and said, I decree it. The same as he decreed that he had declassified the information at Mar-a-Lago with his mind. That's not how government works. Mm-hmm. And by the way, he said, he who saves his country has broken no law. That's from Napoleon.
Thank you, Napoleon. Yeah.
And that justifies who killed Kennedy, right? So he said the exact same thing. Sic semper tyrannis, death to all tyrants. He was saving his country by killing Lincoln. That's not how it works, folks. That's not. So
have we already lost this battle for freedom of the press? I mean, the Washington Post wouldn't take a stand because they were afraid to anger Bezos. He wouldn't.
But we now are listening to a million voices. So is there less? Do they have more control or less control? Because anyone with one of these can have a voice.
Yes, but how wide is your voice? The AP reaches across the globe. There are very few people that reach to the extent that still to this day, it is the legacy, they call legacy or corporate media, that has the furthest reach and the furthest influence with Democrats, Republicans, businessmen, people who make decisions. Podcasts are great. I have one. I love them. I love live streaming. I love I think we need to break up the media monopolies, though, and do it right.
Right. I know you think that we do, but in the meantime, it's not me with my podcast. It's a million people with a million TikTok feeds or a million voices singing in unison. And that did not exist in the 40s and the 60s and in the 70s. So do we have more strength in numbers since we have more access to reaching each other, or does Trump have a plan and Musk have a plan to shut down our voices?
Our power is wrapped up in one simple act. Donald Trump says that he represents the silent majority, which is, by the way, what Richard Nixon claimed.
Sure.
Back when the Partridge Family was around and I was a kid. I love your little the lunchbox there. But here's the deal. The real majority in this country that isn't heard of the people who don't vote. 60% of our vote, when we get a 60% voter turnout, we think it's a great thing. But that means that a minority, a large super minority of 30% or more can elect a president. If the million voters the million people that you have vote, yes, you can change it around. But the fact of the matter is most people don't. So my encouragement is always, I'm glad that you're listening. You're a million listening and you're a million strong. Then listen to this. Get off your butt and vote. I may have a lot of problems with Donald Trump supporters, but the one thing I don't have a problem with is that they did vote. That's the problem in this country. People listening and not voting. And that happens on legacy media or corporate media as well. But that's the big problem in this country. People not being involved. And you have to be involved if you want to make a change. So Donald Trump is just banking. Look, he's a grifter. Mm-hmm. He will sit there and tell you what he thinks you want to hear. That's how he got elected. The whole immigration thing started because he had a rally in I think it was in
Waco,
Phoenix,
Texas.
and said something about, hey, I think immigration, and he got cheers. He listened. A good con artist listens to his mark and tells them what they want to hear, and he's done that.
Do you trust the election results?
I trust the election results. Yeah, I think they were certified election results as much as I trusted the ones in 2020. What was telling is that fewer Democrats voted in 2024. Is there a problem with machines? Well, if you show me some evidence, I'll believe it. But I haven't seen any evidence to that, only supposition. The same as in 2020.
Back to your previous point, there's a conversation lately saying that when some of the effects of these mass layoffs in all the federal agencies are finally felt by the grassroots people, and a lot of these people who are losing their jobs are Trump supporters, then we're going to change minds. Then people are going to understand that elections have consequences, and we'll see what happens.
Well, that's, who said that? Man of the House, Tip O'Neill, all politics is local. Yeah. If people understand how they're being hurt, yes. But see, there's the problem you have in this country, vast media deserts, right? Listen to this, 45% of the counties in this country do not have local media. So you don't get to find out what's really going on. And so until you understand how it hits you at home, how you're hurt, you don't see you just see your divisive media on the national front feeding you information that you love, and you listen to it. But you're right. When it hits them in the wallet, that's when you'll see a difference.
My theory is this: Donald Trump doesn't care at all. Donald Trump already won. He won because he got elected. He won because the Supreme Court acquiesced and let him off the hook. He's not going to pay a price for any of his illegalities. The rest is a downhill sled for him. He said, wait, you're going to give me $250 million? I'll let you make all the decisions you want. Here you go. I'll be in Mar-a-Lago cheating at golf.
Yeah, you and I, brother, I think, and I've been in that room. He just, I'm the best, I'm the biggest, I'm the best. Listen to me. After the first 100 days after he signed all his executive orders, he's going to spend most of his time at Mar-a-Lago. He's going to come out and speak to the press pool that he controls 2 or 3 times a week. He'll be in the White House 2 or 3 times a week. You'll have one briefing a week from the PEP secretary. I don't call her press secretary. It's just a PEP rally. And that's how it's going to be for the next 4 years. Hey, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah, Donald Trump, rah, rah, rah. That's all we're going to hear. And he's going to blame today. He blames Zelensky. He blames Zelensky for Russia invading his country. He blamed Joe Biden for that.
Do you feel this is very dangerous? They're negotiating the future of Ukraine without the Ukrainians being present over in Saudi Arabia.
They don't get to. It's possible.
Well, they're doing it.
They're trying.
If they have their chance, and now we're going to say it for them. That's what he said today.
Oh, my God. Well, I want to plug your great event. The 27th at the Comedy Chateau on Lancashire Boulevard. It's only $20. You're going to see Brian. You're going to have some great conversations about current events. You'll see Hal Sparks perform and Tom Arnold perform, and they're giving all the money and the very meager $20 ticket to fire rescue in Southern California. It's a great event. I hope it's successful for you, my friend.
Well, I hope so, too. And look, Tom and Hal is a great guy to talk to about politics. Tom's been through it himself. Both of them are very funny individuals. Both of them are very good on stage, and both of them are just a joy to spend time with. So
you're going to let them each do. They'll each do a set, and then you'll sit down and have like
how we're going to do it is we're going to come out and talk for about 5 minutes each and talk about comedy, and I'm going to ask them for funny stories, and then I'm going to moderate the discussion about politics and comedy and the problems that you have today in putting comedy together, especially when Donald Trump, look, man, he runs Kennedy Center. It's not just politics. God. He wants to run entertainment. He shows up at the Super Bowl and wants to run the NFL.
Yeah.
Today he's telling the AP how to put together their style book. There's no part of American life or life on this planet that Donald Trump doesn't want you to follow the miasma inside his head and do what he says. So
I think it's so funny that he went over there, and now all these major sold out huge acts are canceling the Kennedy Center performances.
Yes, and fleeing.
Yeah.
Maybe he can put holograms in the seats or something, because there's no one who makes art who's really interested in being around this guy. But I want to hear, before we say goodbye, Brian, I want to hear a little bit about the documentary, because I'm super excited.
Well, if it's the first 100 days of the second Donald Trump regime. We've got camera crews out. We're putting together, it's historic. So to sit, and it's just going to tell you, the main issues, what's going on, starting from the day before the inauguration all the way through the first 100 days. We're only on day 30. I don't recognize this country anymore, and that's why I think you're going to want to take a look at this documentary. And at the end of the day, will you recognize the United States at the end of 100 days of Donald Trump? That's the question.
So
it was a great conversation. I'm glad we got to talk with you. And your podcast is fantastic as well. I listened to the episode with John Bennett, who's a lawyer that represents people in and out of government, and his take on losing his credentials was very, very interesting.
Yeah, Mark Zaid and John Bennett join me weekly for an episode called Just Ask the Press, where we discuss the issues of the day. And with Just Ask the Question, I try to put one person on and have just a really good conversation and take some deep dives into events. So we've had, anyone from Carl Reiner, one of the last interviews he ever did before he died,
Wow.
He did on my show. And so it's fun having people from the entertainment world. Ron Perlman joined us. We've had everybody from Joe Walsh and former vice presidents and former, high-ranking state officials to guitar players and rock and roll stars, just to have a different conversation with them. And I really thank you for that, because that's a lot of fun to do.
No,
you could probably get Fritz Coleman. I know someone.
Well, no. Just before the electricity is shut off by the government.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you, my friend. Good luck. I hope it's a great success for you.
Brian, you're the best.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And
Thanks,
everything
Brian.
you do is so vital. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right, my friend. Be well.
Thanks for coming along down the media path, and however you have found your way to us, we would love for you to like and subscribe and give us a nice review, because as creators, it is our appointed duty to ask you to do that. You may also want to find us on Instagram and Blue Sky, where we are at Media Path Pod, and on Facebook, where our show page is Media Path Podcast, and our Facebook group is Media Path with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. If you are listening to our show, we are also a video podcast on YouTube at Media Path Podcast. You can write to us at mediapathpodcast@gmail.com. My TikTok is Louise Palenker, where I post behind-the-scenes peeks and clips from the show. And Fritz's TikTok is Fritz Coleman Comedy. He posts stand-up clips and popular dance crazes. Our website is mediapathpodcast.com. There you can binge episodes and our spicy newsletter. Thank you so much. On with the rest of the show.
Everyone knows this talented man, an actor and a producer. He played Dr. George Alonzo Gonzo Gates, who was the surgical assistant to Trapper John M.D. McIntyre, played by Pernell Roberts, a legendary show. It ran on CBS from 1979 to 1986. He also played the ruthless business tycoon, Mark Sharp, on Falcon Crest. He played John O'Toole, the father of Oliver, on the Hallmark Channel's expansion films, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. Those films will go on in perpetuity. Many, many credits, concluding with a 3.5-hour stint as Gregory Chase on General Hospital. We are so honored to have with us Gregory Harrison. Gregory, thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Great to see you too.
Good to
All
see
right.
you.
Your greatest claim to fame, if you don't mind me saying so, over and above your numerous film and TV credits, is the fact that you are one of the select and fortunate humans to have been born on the island of Catalina. We don't think of that as a birthplace of anybody. It just seems like a tourist escape. But when you go there, it doesn't even feel like California. I just love Catalina, and I was so surprised to hear that you were born and raised there. Talk about your upbringing on the island of 26 miles across the sea in Catalina.
I'll be happy to. And I know you love the island, and the island loves you. I know that you've been involved in a few things over there over the years, haven't you?
Yes, I have. And not once did you show up at one of my events. But that's okay. Go ahead.
I was born there, third-generation islander. My grandfather started the glass bottom boats back about 1903, wow. and held the world. He dove also for the boats. He would row people out and then dive under the glass and feed the fish. And He held the world's record, 3 minutes and 48 seconds. He could stay under and just feed fish and wave at. Had about 12 big rowboats,
Wow.
and with about a dozen people in each one, and he'd feed the fish under him. My father was born in 1912, and he captained the glass bottom boats and all the tour boats over there, the Flying Fish trip and the Seal Rocks tour and all these different boats, and he captained those for 50 years. And I was supposed to be the next generation of tour boat captains.
Did you work in the summers doing the glass bottom boat thing? What a cool job for a teenager.
Yeah, I didn't want to work for my dad. I mean, that would have added an element of pain to my relationship with my father. So I didn't actually. I dove for coins like a lot of the little kids did then when the big white steamer would come over. And for about 10 years, I made all my spending money diving for coins. And then I worked in the menswear stores, and I worked on the shore boat for a year, and I did all these different jobs growing up there. But it was idyllic and wonderful. But they made a movie on my dad's boat in 1965 when I was 15. And it was called The Glass Bottom Boat with Doris Day and Rod Taylor and Arthur Godfrey my dad played the captain of the boat. And so they had to use my dad's boat. So I had always been interested in acting and variety shows and all these things on the island. We had I had a class of 31 kids, and we would put on a play or two every winter and in this little theater up at the high school and elementary through high school. And so I was fascinated by it, but I could never get close to the sets over there when they were shooting movies. And they did shoot a lot of movies around the island, but they never let me in close. But that day I got close because it was on my dad's boat and nobody could throw me out. And from about 10 feet away, I saw how they were doing it. And, I'd see Doris drop a line and drop the F-bomb right after that. And then say, let's do it again. and I went, I can do that. I can mess up till I get it right. And I'd always loved movies, and I thought that's magic. And now I can be a magician. And I knew at 15 that's what I'd do for the rest of my life, and I knew that I wasn't going to end up on the boats for the rest of my life like everybody kind of expected me to.
Did you keep that aspiration to yourself until you were able to carve out a path towards it, or did you share that with anybody?
I shared with everybody.
Really?
No, I made a commitment. I made it out loud, and I said it to others because it sort of
makes it real.
It reinforced it, and then I, of course, I graduated high school over there and got immediately sent to, I got drafted into the Army and then enlisted so I would be a medic rather than an infantryman. So I ended up 3 years in the Army. When I got out at 20, I went straight to Hollywood on the GI Bill, started studying.
Were you in combat?
No, I was a helicopter medic, but because I was a conscientious objector, they couldn't send me to a combat zone until they finished litigation on my case. Oh, so they sent me to Germany instead, and I spent 2.5 years in Germany, flying around in helicopters, picking up soldiers and their dependents. And
Rich was on a ship.
I had a similar circumstance to you. The first time I went to college, I flunked out. I didn't flunk out, but I flunked down. I went down. Back in those days, and it's the same era you're talking about, if you drop below a C level in college, you lost your college deferment during the draft. Right. So I cleared that bar by a mile. And 60 days after I dropped below a C average, I got called by the Defense Department, please come and get a physical. We're considering you for employment. And I went down there, and everybody who got drafted at that time, this was 1969, everybody that got drafted at that time went to Vietnam. And I had no problem with serving my country. I just didn't want to carry a gun. I wanted to serve it without having to shoot somebody. So I just picked up my clothes and walked naked with my thing of clothes down the hall and enlisted in the Navy. And it was the best decision I ever made. It was my introduction to the broadcasting business. I worked for Armed Forces Radio and Television, and that's how I got started.
Wow.
So kids don't.
Fantastic. You and I, that's very unusual, you know. And I enlisted because I knew everybody being drafted was going into the infantry and going right to Nam.
Yes.
And I knew that if somebody was shooting at me, I was going to shoot back, and I didn't want to kill anyone.
No, that's exactly my thought.
So I took an extra year. I gave them an extra year, begrudgingly, but I gave them an extra year so that I could choose what I would be, which was a medic. And of course, once in, I realized, you're still part of the weapon, and it doesn't work without every, just because you're not the bullet doesn't mean that,
No,
that you're
100%.
not just as deadly as the barrel or the.
And I
or the
think
trigger.
medics, an Army medic had the shortest lifespan in Vietnam. You had like a 24-hour life.
They wore this white X on their helmets that was a target for.
Yeah.
If you killed the medic, then anybody you wounded would probably not make it.
Did you read the book called The Women by Kristen Hanna?
No.
You'd if you're a reader, Gregory, you'll find that book really fascinating because it's about the women who served as surgical nurses on the front lines of Vietnam.
I would love to read. I'll read it. The Women.
Yeah, the Women. Yeah.
I was actually in a MASH unit in Germany when the movie MASH came out.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
I watched it in the theater outdoors and watched that movie, and it was like it was an exact duplicate of the dynamic we had in our MASH unit, and then eventually I get out, I go to Hollywood, I study for 4 or 5 years before I even got an agent, but I learned my craft, and one of the first jobs I got was MASH, and did an episode of MASH, and then 2 years later, I'm in the spin-off of MASH, Trapper John MD.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's kind of,
hysterical.
it was like I had been doing research without knowing
You were
it.
more prepared than any other actor to do that show.
Sometimes the universe gives us clues about our future. We just have to always pay attention.
So I have two strong memories of Catalina, and then we'll get on. I won't make any more of it about me. But every time there was a Santa Ana wind, for those of you in Southern California that are not familiar with this weather pattern, this odd thing that we just had that caused our awful firestorms, is an offshore wind, a northeast to southwest wind that blows offshore. It comes down out of the desert and through the canyons and passes an offshore. Well, they can be catastrophic for the island of Catalina because those winds push all that water right over into Avalon Harbor. And people would send me pictures, say, stop being so friendly about the Santa Ana winds. Here's a 25-foot wave crashing into my restaurant. I mean, it was really, they were freaked out when a Santa Ana wind would happen over there.
I grew up with those things. And you want to hear something? I started surfing at 9 years old on the backside of Catalina, 1959. And for the next 8 years, while I was growing up there, of course, my father has boats that are moored in the harbor. Huge glass bottom boats are moored in the harbor. And every time the Santa Anas would blow, he would go out and risk his life trying to keep the boats on the moorings.
Absolutely.
And I would get my surfboard and go surf the harbor. So I would be begging for Santa Ana winds, and he would be dreading Santa Ana winds. So we had that kind of confrontation in the house many times.
Unbelievable. Well, we want to talk about your first burst of fame, which is Trapper John MD. You got out of the Army. You studied for 4 or 5 years. How did that great chance happen that you would get a part on that show?
I right out of the workshop after about 4 years in this acting school, I was in 2 or 3 acting schools, but somebody came, wanted to produce and direct a little independent film. They said, who are your top students in class, and they were looking for somebody who wasn't in the union and who wouldn't ask for much money. And they came in, they watched a few scenes that we were working on at the time, and they offered me the gig. It was a year-long shooting on weekends. And it ended up, no money at all. But they shot it down in Long Beach. I shot it for a year. And at the end of that, Universal, remember Charles Champlin? He ran he did the counter section. He was the movie critic.
He was the main movie critic of the LA Times at the time.
Yeah, he loved it. He loved the rough cut he'd seen. He told Sid Sheinberg at Universal, who ran the studio, and Sid saw it and loved it, although it needed a lot of reshooting. And so he bought the movie for this little tiny film. He bought it. I had no money in the bank. And suddenly I'm starring in a feature film being released by Universal that we reshot. That got me in the union. We shot about half the movie again. That got me an agent. And suddenly I was a movie star. And I sort of skipped the bit part. section of my career, and I had no money, but I was going in on leads, and so I ended up doing a couple of independent films, and then a couple of miniseries, and then Trapper John was actually my 7th screen test that year, and I came in second on the first 6.
Wow.
Several. Oh God, Wonder Woman. I did the Wonder Woman pilot with the original Wonder Woman pilot, and a bit part. But 8 is Enough. I came in second, and I mean all these. And then it was my turn. I knew I was getting close, and then it was my turn. I got Trapper John, MD, and we got that Carol Burnett time slot at 10 p.m. on Sunday nights, and that was the gift that kept on giving.
Wow. So the night after this thing airs, when everyone's looking at the same shows, you leave your house, and is there a difference how people notice you, respond to you, etc.?
Oh yeah, instant. And I was living in Studio City in an apartment, and everybody was so aware of what was on the networks. Back then, there was just the 3 networks, and if you were, we got 15, 20 million viewers every week. If you got that now, that would be the number 1 rated show of the decade. Yep. But then it was just 3 networks, so all the shows were way up in the millions. Even the third place shows were in the millions. So I had people recognizing me everywhere, left and right, suddenly. And it was, and it was very seductive, and I made the pretty typical mistakes that young, successful actors make when they get some money and some and a little bit of fame. But I got through it, and I've had the career that I dreamt of, which was I've worked as an actor for 50-something years and never had to do anything else for a living, and that was what I was hoping.
So you did 3.5 years on General Hospital, and that has ended now, correct?
Yeah, they killed me off.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
ALS and killed me off.
Oh, those bastards! Wow.
But I had a great 3.5 years, and it started out as a 10-show arc, and it ended up in 3.5 years. So,
but it's a different grind, isn't it? It's than what you were used to.
I had avoided soaps my whole career, and I thought, oh, thank God, I don't ever have to do one, because it scared me. Honestly, I was terrified of the idea of 30 pages,
a lot of dialogue,
30 pages a day.
Yeah,
And then somehow when I the first job offered after the COVID pause was this soap, and I heard myself saying yes. It was like an out of body experience. I couldn't believe I was doing it, and I was terrified, more terrified my first day on that soap 3-4 years ago than I was back when I'd star in that high school play and I'd throw up just before I'd go out on stage. But I figured out after 10 shows, I can do this. And actually, it can be fun. And I just thrived on it for 3.5 years. It was really great.
What are some of the tricks that people use to memorize that much dialogue that you found people doing?
I think everybody's different.
Yeah.
I just did more homework. I did more homework on one episode of General Hospital than I did in my entire high school career of homework. I mean, I just focused on it. I live up here north of LA near the beach. So I'd go down and walk the beach with my script in hand by 20 or 30 pages every night, every evening, watching the sunset and doing my dialogue. And then the next morning at 6, I'd get in the car and drive down there and do it.
They don't do a lot of rehearsal on those either, right? It's not
rehearsal.
Yeah.
You do a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. And back then we had masks on, so I didn't even see the other actor's face, or half the time I couldn't even understand what they were saying until the camera was rolling, and then you get one take.
Well, it's a good place to have a mask at General Hospital.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Everybody had to wear masks for the first year or so because of COVID until camera would roll.
Right,
and then
right.
Take them off, roll camera, and put them right back on.
I never realized the power of course, it's different now because now they have real dramas with like the Real Housewives of Orange County. It's a whole different thing. But back then, I'll never forget after the Northridge earthquake, and for a couple of weeks we were on the air for 24 hours. And the biggest complaints we got in the air is, when is Days of Our Lives coming back on? When am I going to be able to? I mean, that's all people cared about. You know, the world's crumbling around us, and they wanted to know when. So we had to announce several times during the news, Days of Our Lives will be aired in its entirety at 2:00 in the morning. Set your VCR. Crazy.
Meantime, Southern California is burning down, by the way.
Yeah. Your home, you weren't close to any of that stuff, were you?
Oh, yeah. Interestingly, the big earthquake in '94, I think it was.
No, I meant the fires. I was
living
in
the fire. Randy and I, my wife Randi Oaks, and I were living up in above in the valley near Mulholland. We had a nice house up there on top of a ridge, and we had sold it. And I was moving to Oregon. About a month after I sold it to a friend of mine, that earthquake hit, and the whole house had to be torn down.
Oh my goodness!
It was one of the selling points was it's built on granite. Well, the whole granite base of the house moved several feet, so that house had to be destroyed.
We have the internet now where fans can find each other, which it didn't happen when Trapper John was on. So, you know, you're a part of like several different fan bases. You've got the Hallmark people, the Trapper John people, the General Hospital people, the Logan's Run people, the Falcon Crest people. So of all these people, like who approaches you most often, like, or who is the most engaged?
Well, lately, of course, it's the people who love their stories, the soap opera lovers, you know, and they are ardent fans. Mm-hmm. They are so devoted. But I also have always had a huge faction of fans from Logan's Run, which was my first series, and a science fiction series. And, you know, science fiction fans are pretty rabid as well. And they've never forgotten that. But I did one of the first things after Trapper John was a hit, I started producing movies and plays and bought a theater in LA, the Coast Playhouse down on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I did a movie. The first movie I produced was called For Ladies Only. It was about a male stripper. 1981, I think
that was courageous.
I didn't get the casting call on that one. I don't know.
Well,
it's coming.
That one got some pretty rabid fans as well.
I guess
that are still when I go to one of these signings or one of these conventions, they're all saying, "You got a picture For Ladies Only?" Half the time it's guys, but yeah.
For sure.
Is Trapper John streaming anywhere on many of these multiple channels that have old television fare?
I'm sure it is, but not. It was never that great in syndication. It was the only series I've ever done where I owned some of the syndication, and I never got a check. So,
wow.
I don't think it did that well. You know, it was a great show in first run. We were always in the top 5, top 10 at least, for all seven and a half years. But didn't do well in syndication. So I don't even know if it's out there anymore.
Now
I moved on. You know, I've been fortunate. I've been lucky. I've done 8 series that most of them lasted a season or 2, and then Trapper, of course, went 7.5, and then the Hallmark has been so kind to me, and I've done so many movies for them and series. Science Seal Delivered is a series of movies, and we've done 13 of those. So 13 12-hour movies.
13 movies.
Talk about how that
following
works.
A season of the show that you weren't on, correct?
Right.
So tell us how this all unfolded and the premise behind the franchise.
Well, Martha Williamson, who you may know who she is, she's a wonderful writer, producer, showrunner. I had worked with her on a sitcom, Miller Boyett sitcom, back in the late '80s, and we became friends. And then she became the showrunner for Touched by an Angel, and ran that show for 10 years. And I directed some of them. I guest starred in 4 of those episodes over the years, and so we knew each other well. And then she got this thing going in that first season, Science Seal Delivered on Hallmark, and they needed she said, "We need someone to come in and be the dad. Will you be the dad?" And I said, "Yeah, fly me to Vancouver. Let's do it." Mm-hmm. And so we shot the whole thing up on Vancouver Island. Well, not really Vancouver Island, but sometimes, on that coast of Vancouver, which is the most beautiful coast in North America. And for about 10 years now, we've made 13 different movies.
Was that the first time that format had ever been done, where they take a premise and then they just continue to do feature films beyond it under the same template?
I doubt it was the first time, but it was the most successful time that I had heard of up to that point. And we had a great cast, and Martha's just an amazing human being, and the stories resonate, and I think they, we're always self-indulgent as actors, kind of out of necessity. In order to have a career, you have to be indulgent. But every now and then we hope, most actors hope, to do something that makes the world a little better place. And the Signed, Sealed, Delivered movies really help do that. I really believe in them, and I believe in the morals of the stories, and I just feel like they make the world a somewhat better place, and I'm proud to be a part of that.
I think there was a peak in Hallmark viewing during the pandemic. I read an article about that, where people were seeking comfortable family fare and not threatening fare and stuff with a little more humanity than they were used to. And they sought that out on Hallmark, because all of those things sort of revert back to we're just human beings.
I think that's true. I mean, that was always sort of the Hallmark badge, but it became really valued during the pandemic. And then because of how well it was doing during the pandemic, Netflix and a bunch of others started creating divisions of family fare to try and fill that gap in their own streaming services. And now there's a lot of competition for that audience.
So in Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, the premise lends itself to endless stories. So this will go on forever. And what you're doing is really is you're connecting people, which is always heartwarming. So there's a letter that never quite got delivered, and then there's a team who tries to hunt down the recipient, the intended recipient.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
That's basically the premise, yeah. And there's a lot of variations on that theme, but yes, it's and it's become anachronistic now. I mean, that there's so many people just do emails, but there's still some letters being sent out there, and there are still letters being found that somehow fell under a machine 10 years ago, and they still need to be delivered. And there's, Martha is amazing at creating these stories about why they need to be delivered and to whom, and what the impact of that is or might be. And it's really fun we have a cast of 4 or 5 regulars who, we also have our own dramas and our own stories to tell throughout this, So, it's a difficult thing to write for a series and to come up with new ideas for episodes when you're, in your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th season.
When Trapper John spun off from MASH, did any of the writers from MASH slide over with you guys?
No, in fact, MASH was still filming when we started. We overlapped for a season or 2. We were both on 20th Century Fox. I'd go over, listen to this. I was next door to Charlie's Angels set.
Hello.
We were on stage 5. Charlie's Angels was next door to us, and MASH was just around the corner, and Love Boat was just one stage past MASH. So imagine back in the day being on that lot and going to the commissary for lunch and walking past 40 girls, on certain days we called it, it's Lust Boat today, because they were doing the pool scenes, and they'd always have 30 or 40 girls in bikinis, and they would all come over for lunch. And of course, all the lecherous guys in every other show would
make that part of the tour.
Would be very excited. Make sure they were going to the commissary for lunch that day.
Of course, you had plans. You have to be there. So that year, whenever this was, I was trying to figure out how to enter show business, and I took a job as an intern at Fenton Feinberg Casting, which had a trailer at the entrance to the lot that you're describing.
Yeah,
and,
Mike Fenton. Yeah,
Mike Fenton. These great people. And I worked very hard for nothing, but it was like it was from a girl from suburban Buffalo. I'm walking on this lot and looking at all the tuxedo people are from Love Boat, all the Scrubs people are from MASH, all the I mean, you could tell. And I got to know some guy that I don't even remember his name, but on the last day of MASH, he said, "Come with me. I'm going to watch the last scene." Me?
Wow.
So
On the last scene of MASH?
yeah,
Oh my God! Did you get to see it?
yeah.
Oh, that's a
Talk about
once in
ratings.
a lifetime kind of moment.
That was one of the highest ratings in the history of television. That
It was
particular
like-
Absolutely.
It was
yes.
like 20 people deep around this. You know, you're at first you're just a kid, so you're like, wow, it's so small. The set but the soundstage is huge, but the set that's lit is
Right.
very small.
Right.
And because of the historic moment that we were witnessing, it was like 20 people deep. So I just hung in the back and took it all in.
Wow.
What a Kodachrome moment that is for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a producer as well. What have you produced?
Produced about 25 TV movies over the years.
Oh, wow.
And I gave that up 15, 20 years ago. It's just because it's a marriage and I have 4 kids and I wanted to devote myself to them rather than to raising projects and, seeing them into creation. But I really enjoyed it for a while. I created a lot of work for myself. A lot of the movies that I did, television movies mostly that I did, I produced. So I gave myself opportunities to play things that other people didn't think of me for. I've never been good at waiting by a phone for someone to give me permission for anything. So
There you go.
I love that.
that was why I did it. And I created a theater. I mean, I bought a theater and we did 60 productions there at the Coast Playhouse. Many of them went elsewhere, some to New York, some on tours. I created a lot of, and I hadn't ever, here's my thing. I'll back up a little. My career is backwards. I came east to Hollywood, which no other actor has done. And I started in features, worked my way into television, and then bought a theater and created myself as a theater actor, and eventually worked my way to New York, acted my way to New York and Broadway, and did 3 Broadway musicals.
You are the Benjamin Button of actors.
Sort of backwards. Yeah, everything backwards.
All right.
What will you do now before Weezy gets into her fantastic
No,
game
because we're going to do a game as soon as.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I just let me ask him one question.
Yes.
So now that General Hospital is over, do you have any plans? Anything on the books?
I don't really. I just had back surgery I've been putting it off for years.
Oh.
I needed a couple of new discs put in my lower back, so I
Oh.
did that a couple months ago.
You feeling okay?
And it's all good. It's all worked out.
Good.
Still rehabbing, but it'll be great. And so I laid off. I wasn't looking for work since I quit doing General Hospital, but I'm writing, and I think I'm going to write my life out.
Wow.
Not necessarily. I don't know that anybody else really wants to hear it, but I know my kids will love it, and
yeah.
and my grandkids, and I'm just thinking I'll write my life out. I've had a really interesting, kind of different life, and maybe it's worth writing out. So I'm doing
Brag
a lot
about
of
your
writing.
4 children. Brag about
Well,
are any
his
of them in
daughter
show
was
business?
on General Hospital with him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell
Thank
us
you.
about
good
that
research
moment.
there. Good research. Yeah, Lily did. Lily and I have. She's my middle daughter, Lily Ann Harrison, and she's. She and I have done 3 movies together now. Well, 2 movies in General Hospital together.
Oh.
She's a wonderful writer too. She's got several feature scripts that are making the rounds and getting very close to a green light. A couple of them.
Wow.
And then I have a youngest daughter who's a very successful model, Kate Harrison. And she's been modeling for 17 years
Holy cow.
and all over the world. And she lives in New York. I'm on my way to see her in a few days, actually. And she's phenomenal, and gorgeous, obviously. And then my oldest daughter, Emma, is a virtual accountant up in Portland. I have 2 granddaughters by her.
Oh.
Lily, I have a grandson by, who's 2.5.
Aw.
My granddaughters are 3 and 6. And my wife, Randi, and I just are really enjoying being
You're having a full
grandparents.
life. I know. I'm a grandfather too. It's the best part of my life.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
Fritz, everybody says that my whole life. Everybody goes, oh, being a grandparent, that's the best. That's the best. And I was just like, yeah, right, fine, yeah, sure. And then it is.
Yes. First of all, you don't put pressure on yourself. You realize that there are no mistakes to be made. Just make sure there's plenty of love, and everything else will take care of itself. And it's much easier than being a parent. You don't obsess over everything.
And as soon as something bad has to happen, you hand them back.
Precisely.
It's just pure love.
So you're just bringing good news to that
Yeah,
kid. So the smiles you get are so pure.
100%.
Oh, they worship. Yeah.
And a bad diet.
All the treats, all the love and all the treats. All right, so we have a game called IMDB Roulette. If you are willing to play Gregory Harrison, you have 120 IMDB credits.
You can't lose at this game, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, so you're really ahead. And what we do is we say the name of a credit, and then you, if you can, tell us who you played and what you remember about the experience.
Okay, like the name of the character?
Yeah, and most people can't. Most people are like, he was a waiter. I guess.
Yeah, some people say, I have no memory of doing that
I'll be
project.
lucky if I remember the project at all.
All right, but we're going to start with MASH because I'll tell you who you played. You played Lieutenant Tony Baker, and we just want to know what you remember about being on that set.
Linda Kelsey. Do you know the actress Linda Kelsey?
Yeah.
Redhead. Mm-hmm. Wonderful actress. She was she was playing opposite me. She was guest starring on it. And we had gotten married, but we hadn't consummated the marriage, and I had been called to the front. And so this is my first 24-hour leave. And I come back from the front to the MASH unit where she's a nurse, and there's no tent for us to consummate our marriage. So they throw Hot Lips out of her tent and put us in there, and they claim that I've got some disease that you can only catch knee deep in the Nile River, and I have to be isolated with her for 24 hours. And
Perfect.
And I remember that the episode was so special to Hot Lips. Help me with the name.
Oh, Loretta Swit.
Yeah.
Loretta Swit. Yes, yeah. Loretta Swit was wonderful. And Loretta was so excited because it was the first time that Hot Lips got to be a sympathetic character.
Oh.
And she actually had a scene where she could cry.
Oh.
And I remember so excited about her.
Was that the days of Larry Gelbart? Was he still working there?
Yeah.
One of the
Larry
most brilliant people I ever knew. A funny, brilliant man.
Yeah. I was just listening to an autobiography of Mel
Brooks.
Mel Brooks, and Larry Gelbart was one of his writers on Show of Shows.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
On
That's
Show
crazy.
of Shows.
Yeah.
Really, wow.
That was an action-packed writing cast.
Yeah, and everybody was there.
Yeah.
Neil
Go ahead.
Simon.
Give him another
Number
one.
two, Air Bud Golden Retriever or Receiver.
Yeah.
Wait, what is the title?
Yeah, Air Bud Golden Retriever. I played the veterinarian. I don't know what my character's name was.
Well, he was.
But there were 7 dogs.
Oh my goodness.
And each dog had its little its skill. You know, one was the close-up dog because he had the best face. One could actually catch the football in its teeth, flying through the air, catch the football in its teeth.
Right.
And another one was like better behaved. They had one. There was this one scene where the dog is in the middle of the street and a car is coming down the street toward it. And the audience, you know, there's long lens over here and you're seeing the dog in the foreground and the car coming. So it's the telephoto lens has sort of extended it. So it's not really as dangerous as it appeared. But my character comes running through, grabs the dog and exits frame. And so I save the dog from getting hit by this car.
Oh.
They had one dog, one of the 7 dogs, was so stupid that he wouldn't move when a car was coming at him.
Mm-hmm. Retrievers
and that was his one scene in the movie. They saved him the whole movie for that scene because they knew he would just sit there and go, and I grabbed him.
So you got
but it was
the
a really fun gig, and we shot it up in Vancouver, and
so
between raindrops.
You got the dog with the very poor survival instincts.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Almost none.
So your character's name was Dr. Patrick Sullivan, for the record. Number 3.
Oh, no, it's all coming back to me.
Yeah. Number 3, and I'm sure you're going to have a good story about this one. Hot in Cleveland.
Oh, it was Betty White's 93rd birthday.
No, really?
Yeah, we had
Awesome.
while I was shooting that, we had a 93rd birthday party for Betty White.
That was a funny
cool.
show. That was a funny show.
That was a funny show, and those 4 women together, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Number 5, Fairhaven.
Fairhaven, yeah, Fairhaven. I played. I don't remember his name now, but I played a guy who ran one of those centers that turns a gay guy straight.
Oh my God!
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly, believe me. And I was playing a bad guy. I mean, it was a bad guy, but I had to play him very religious and very sympathetic and not blatant, not obvious, you know. So it was a really challenging kind of role, and that was one of the movies that my daughter Lily was in with me.
Okay.
She played the girl that this gay kid was trying to become straight with.
Was that one of the first films about conversion therapy?
Conversion therapy, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
So that was an important film for a lot of people to see.
Yeah. We took it around to several film festivals, a couple of gay film festivals, and boy, a lot of people were moved by that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the only film I did about homosexuality in the world and the trials and tribulations of it. I also did a film where I played Randall Kleiser that Randall directed, called It's My Party, where Eric Roberts and I were lovers back in 1995.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
It's based on a true story about Randall's boyfriend who had AIDS and knew he didn't have long to go, and he decided that he would have a big party, all of his friends, and then drink the potion at the end of it and end it before he became a blithering mess. You know, he just wanted to die with dignity. So that was called It's My Party. Wow. True story. A lot of the people that were in it were actually there at the real party, and that was a huge, effective film for a lot of people in the gay community.
1995. Wow, that is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
All right, our last entry is Centennial.
Oh, my favorite. That's my favorite job ever.
Really?
I played Levi Zentz, and I shot for, there was a 25-hour miniseries. I was in 12 or 13 hours of it, and we shot for 6 months. Wow. All the way from Ohio on Conestoga wagons. Stephanie Zimbalist and I were boyfriend, girlfriend. We were Mennonites. I had been shunned. And we work our way out in Conestoga wagons to Colorado and start the town of Centennial. And I go through all these transitions, and I literally aged from 22 to 78.
Wow.
In that miniseries.
Wow.
And it was the best. It was my big break. It was my big break because it legitimized me as an actor, and every good actor in Hollywood was in that show. There were hundreds of characters because it went all the way from like early 1700s all the way to present day.
Who did you get to meet?
So it was the Roots theory.
It was an
success.
amazing production, and I'm proudest of anything I've ever done. I'm proudest of that.
So who did you get to meet on the set? Who did you get to have a conversation with?
Oh God, I worked with so many great actors. Richard Chamberlain, Barbara Carrera, Cliff DeYoung, Alex Karras, oh gosh, Lynn Redgrave, Timothy Dalton. It goes on and on and on. I mean, just literally hundreds of actors, and it was just an amazing production.
Was that the Michener book?
John Wilder wrote and produced it. John Wilder for Universal, and I was so blessed to get that. It was by far the best role I've ever been offered.
Was that a Michener book?
It was a James Michener book. So he
25...
starts with the creation of the earth with every one of his novels.
Oh, so 25 hours. So how many weeks was it on the air?
It was I think the first one was 3 hours and all the rest were 2 hours.
Wow. Can we watch that?
Like 12 12 productions.
Is it streaming somewhere, do you think? I would like
It's on
to see
DVD.
it.
I'll bet
It's on
it
DVD.
is.
You can. Oh, I'm sure it's streaming. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's an amazing production, and there's still. I just recently, a few months ago, I went to Colorado. There's a international fan club for Centennial, and I went and met people from all over the planet that came to Colorado to look at the sets of Centennial, and I sort of was a tour guide for them of the sets that I had shot scenes.
Isn't that amazing?
That's so
It
cool.
was so much fun. It was so much fun.
That is
And I'm so proud of it.
Wow.
It's the best Americana ever made for television.
Really? Okay, let's all check that out. All right, you've given us a homework assignment. All right, is there anything else we should know, Gregory, that's coming up that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, I think one more. I don't know the exact date, but it's coming up in the next month or two. The one more movie of Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Mm-hmm.
We may have more, but right now that's all we've got in the can. And so that'll be coming out on Hallmark in the next month or two.
Well, Fritz is going to send you a letter and then lose it so that you'll have a plot line moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would appreciate it if everybody would start using letters again, so we will have plots.
No, kids, my grandchildren can't write in cursive. It's squiggly lines. I mean, because of texting, they're losing their whole writing skill.
They don't teach it.
Yeah.
They spend that day teaching computer. Why should they teach cursive? Remember all the hours we sat there looking at the cursive over the
handwriting.
Absolutely. And try showing your grandkids a map and see what they do with that.
No, forget about it. What a pleasure to meet you, Greg, and thank you for all your years of great entertainment. And
Fred, it's a pleasure.
You're as nice as we assumed you were going to be. Thank you.
always known.
Thank you. I've always wanted to say hey to you, Fritz, because we both have a love of Catalina, and I've always felt a strong bond with you over that.
You know, I took my grandchildren on one of those 4-day Mexico cruises, which I do not recommend to most people. No. But the highlight of it was the first night you stay in Catalina, and this time you went on the submarine that goes down, and you blow the fish out the side of the submarine, and you feed the fish, and my grandson thought that was the coolest thing ever. So,
Gregory, do you know Bruce Belland?
Bruce Belland?
Yeah, from the Fort Preps. He wrote 26 Miles Across the Sea.
Oh, well, I grew up singing that song. Yeah. No, I don't know him, but
he's been on this show twice, and if you want to come into the studio, I'll have him come back, and you guys can talk about Catalina for an hour and a half.
As a kid, I always went 26 miles across the sea. Santa Catalina is waiting for me. Santa Catalina, the island of romance. Romance. No pants.
Good night, everybody. Enjoy the...
All right. We want to thank our guests, Brian Karem and Gregory Harrison. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Mason Brown, Raf Rusak, Jordan Reyes, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palanker, here with Fritz Coleman and Gregory Harrison. Be well and wise. Take good care of each other, and we will see you along the media path. That was awesome.
Thank you so much, Gregory. That was amazing.
Yo. We're going to take our
my friend.
Gregory, hold that pose for just a few more moments. We're going to pose for a picture with you as we stand up now.